Welcome back to Andrew's Night Talk. Today's topic is US versus China. The United States and China are currently the two biggest economies in the world, and as both superpowers are about to clash, even with increasingly close ideological approach, it is time to have a look at the two dominant forces around the globe from an objective view. 12 years ago at a dinner party, I spoke with one of the top elites in New Zealand real estate market regarding the comparison of US and China, including the topic of which country will come on top in the future. As a business tycoon visiting both countries frequently, his response was quite impressive. He said, "I don't know which country will come on top in the future, but I do know that many of the top intellects from around the world are working for the United States, including the top Chinese minds. Surprisingly, I never looked at it that way in the past." The world witnessed the economic miracle of mainland China after the 1989 Tiananmen Square massacre, and all wanted to share a piece of this miracle, including many of the American elites. But did anyone really know how China achieved such miracle? Because it is very important to know and learn from the experience of a successful development model, so that any country learning from it can benefit from this model. If no one really cares, how are you going to share a piece of this miracle? But after careful research, I realized that this complicated economic model was not a legitimate one for any morally sane country to learn from. Put aside the fact that very few countries have the advantage of having a totalitarian government and over 1 billion slave laborers at its disposal. The massive operation of piracy, stealing intellectual properties, and industrial espionage are beyond any normal country's capabilities. Many people may question the evidence of this conclusion, so let's just look at one simple example. Ask a couple of random mainland Chinese people whether they have bought a legitimate copy of the Microsoft Windows or Office product once in their lifetime. You will easily see the answer. Throughout the information era, personal computers and the internet transformed the business world. But China was able to rapidly benefit from this revolution without having to pay any significant costs. This fact alone ensured that Chinese economic growth rate could easily surpass any competitions around the world, without anyone noticing anything suspicious. There might be some other immoral countries trying to do the same thing, but never at this scale and never so successful. The United States surely was not able to catch up. Apart from the economic development model, the political system is another major factor between the two countries. The United States is the only real constitutional republic exist on planet Earth, which by far is the most advanced political system ever achieved in human history. It limits the power of the government to give real freedom to its citizens, while on the other hand, China has the most powerful totalitarian political system ever existed on planet Earth. It ensured the CCP government has unlimited power to be able to manipulate anything they want, and their most sophisticated propaganda machine and the judicial system was able to make sure any discontent from its citizens will be silenced immediately. Put it in a simple way to explain, US citizens have too much freedom, while Chinese citizens have too little freedom. But in recent years, the United States showed when people have way too much freedom, it could be catastrophic, especially when criminals possess that much freedom. It can lead to the reverse effect. When comparing these two countries, many people use capitalism versus communism as their defining terminology. But they failed to understand that when China opened up at the end of the Cultural Revolution, it was no longer a communist country, but instead using the new Chinese character socialism to cover up their crony capitalism nature. The comparison of different countries normally follow the logic of politics, economics, culture, military, foreign policy, and some other factors. Since culture and military are not the main reasons to the conflict of these two superpowers, I will skip these two areas and straight into the other factor, human rights. In comparison, the United States focused too much on human rights, which makes it vulnerable against China. For example, the George Floyd incident in the United States marked the peak of political correctness in American history. A criminal with countless felony records died during an arrest, suddenly became a hero just because he was black, showed how much human rights means in the United States. Of course, we cannot ignore the political motive behind the whole process, and the fact that the autopsy showed overdose of drugs was the real cause of death. This kind of events was never even a thing in China. Even law-abiding citizens were treated like trash very often. Who cares about criminals? With this crucial difference in place, it was very hard for the United States to match the power of China. For instance, during the Obama era, CIA almost lost its entire informants network from mainland China due to a treachery incident. All informants were executed without even getting a fair trial, including a pregnant woman along with her unborn baby. On the other hand, Chinese spy Christine Fan infiltrated into many important US politicians' personal life without having to fear about any retaliation, because she knew in the United States, human rights will make sure she was perfectly safe. And even if she got caught, the US justice system will allow her to receive a fair trial, and her safety will be protected all the time. The worst part of this incident was the compromised politicians were still serving in the US Congress and in many other important positions all over America. Finally, the United States has to balance its foreign policy to meet its allies' tough challenges both economically and morally. Doesn't matter if it will hurt the American interests to make sure it does not lose the moral high ground. But China does not care. It will buy votes from African countries to push its own agenda in the United Nations and support all the thuggish dictator regimes around the world like North Korea and the Taliban against the United States. It was never a fair and level playfield. So, if the two superpowers were to clash, it is hard to say which side could come out on top. However, through 3 decades of infiltration and ideological contamination, Democrats in the United States is getting very much unlike their Chinese counterparts. And with the sitting president taking 10% of his son's business dealings with government-backed Chinese enterprises, maybe the United States has already lost to the world's most sophisticated masterminds of all time. Or maybe God has another plan in the end. I'm Andrew Hathaway. Thanks for watching.